Second feature. Command and prohibition are inseparable. In the second place, we should observe that God's precepts contain more than we find expressed in words alone. Nevertheless, we must always act with restraint so as not to interpret them any way we like, by twisting them this way or that as we choose. There are some indeed who take liberties of this kind, so that the authority of the law is derided, as if it were unreliable or else incapable of conveying a sensible meaning. If possible, then, some way must be found which leads us safely and surely to God's will. That is, we must see how far an exposition may go beyond the actual words, so that it is clear that we have no man-made gloss added to God's law, but the pure, natural meaning of the lawgiver, faithfully expressed. It is of course evident that in all the law's precepts the part is put in place of the whole. Thus, anyone who seeks to restrict his interpretation to the words alone deserves only ridicule. Clearly, the soberest interpretation of the law must go beyond the words themselves, but just how far is unclear, unless we decide on some sort of standard. I believe that the best standard is that which takes account of the reason for which the precept was given. That is, for each and every precept, we should consider the purpose for which God gave it to us. For example, every precept seeks either to command or to forbid. We correctly understand each category when we observe the motive or objective which it has in view. As the fifth commandment has as its aim the honoring of those who, in God's eyes, are worthy of honor, this is the essence of it. God's will is that we honor those on whom He has conferred a certain superiority. To despise and willfully disobey them is abhorrent to Him. The intention of the first commandment is that God alone should be honored. Overall, therefore, it means that genuine piety, the way in which we honor His majesty, is pleasing to God. Conversely, He detests impiety. Accordingly, we will first look at the content of each commandment, and then on the basis of what it says, we will attempt to formulate a contrary argument along these lines. If this thing pleases God, the opposite must displease Him. If this thing displeases Him, the opposite must please Him. If He commands this, He must prohibit the other. If He prohibits this, He must command the other. For it is commonly known that whenever vice is condemned, virtue is commended. We, however, demand something more than men generally understand when they say such things. When they speak of virtue as the opposite of vice, they mean merely abstinence from vice. We go further, interpreting virtue as an act contrary to the corresponding evil. An example will make my meaning clearer. To the average mind, the commandment, "You shall not kill," signifies only that we should abstain from all wrongdoing and from the wish to injure others. I maintain, however, that more is meant, and that we must help to preserve our neighbour's life by every means in our power. And lest it be thought that I am speaking unreasonably, I will try to prove the truth of what I say. The Lord forbids that we should injure or hurt our neighbour, because He wants our neighbour's life to be dear and precious to us. That is why He lays on us the duty of love, by which life is to be preserved. In this way, we can see how the purpose of the commandment teaches us what we are commanded or forbidden to do. If we ask why the Lord only half signified what He willed, instead of clearly expressing it, several reasons might be given by way of reply. There is one, however, which I prefer above all others. Unless the vileness of our sin is in some sense tangible, the flesh always strives to camouflage or conceal it by empty evasions. Therefore, God chose to highlight the very worst and most desperate of sins in each category, so that merely to hear of them would inspire such dread as to produce in us a deeper hatred of sin. In judging moral failings, we are often deceived, for we minimize those which are in some small way inconspicuous. The Lord thus delivers us from our error, training us to relate each fault to a specific type, that we might better appreciate how repugnant it should be to us. For example, we do not seem to regard hatred or anger as a truly terrible wrong when we simply call them by those names. But when the Lord prohibits them by calling them murder, we have a clearer view of how much he detests them, since he gives them the name of so dreadful a crime. In this way, alerted by the judgment of God, we learn to better understand the gravity of the faults which we previously regarded as slight.